There we are. Okay, looks good. So the recording has started. We were doing booleans, boolean operators, and did some examples previously. Um, yeah, there was just one more example from our lesson, the topic we were doing earlier. So I'm going to finish up that. That's probably the last one. And then we look at some of the semantics here, right? Okay. So I'm going to use my notepad again. By the way, I think I've dropped that file in your Dropbox. And I opened up, I made a new folder. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at this one. We're still doing quotations. We did examples 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now I'm going to bring your attention to example number 5. And this has actually, it's redundant. It's saying one, okay, A, B, C, and D. These are the 4 variants of how the quotation marks is used to emphasize on some of the notations or the drop words or the stop words that the search engine wouldn't consider, how to make it work for you. So this is what the example is showing. Now the first one, A, you know that the search would not recognize the question mark, as if, whenever you put it at the end of the search phrase, it's supposed to act as if it is posing a question, whereas the search engine is not considering question mark as a notation that or a symbol it can recognize. So that's where the dilemma is. In A, what you could do is, for instance, where you are using two words internet research and you want anything with what I'm looking at, and I'm sure you can too. You can see what this search is trying to do. Let me just give me a moment. I think this is where we need to fix something. So in A, you could see that there is a question mark placed inside of the quotes, and it is forcing the search. Literally, it's telling the search to look for the two words internet and research together, but somehow be associated with a question mark. It's not a complete question, it's just two words. And there could be a question or something that precedes the question mark here that may have a longer phrase or something that poses a question, a real question with complete set of words, but that is missing over here. And this is only for someone who doesn't know if any question exists with these two words in them. But because your internet research has to be the two words that could make part of the question, so the best bet, without knowing exactly how the questions are phrased, and you want a relationship that poses or makes it appear as if the question mark would somehow be attached to internet research or part of the sentence or a phrase or a question itself, you might want to force it by putting the question mark inside of the quotes, so that there is a better chance of you finding It's still like finding a needle in a haystack, but you could write it in few different ways, but A could be one option. Then we look at B. In B, you've got these two words which are enforced, and then you have a question mark within quotes also. Now, A and B is probably more difficult to get to where you want to go, but in C, I can sense that it could be better than A and B. And it's because, you see, if I put internet research and the question mark at the end and enclose it all inside of the quotes, it is actually asking the search to find exact mirror image of what is written or the way it's written and the sequence in which it is written. So internet research with the question mark, meaning the word research should be the last word in any question, preceded by the word internet, and the research should end with a question mark. That's what the query is asking. But again, since we don't know the structure of the question itself or how it is phrased, this could be another option we can check to see if we can find something we require. But interestingly, we have put a word what as well as part of the search. But do you know what's going to happen with what if we use what in the search? What is a stop word, and therefore it may be ignored, or it actually would definitely be ignored. So what the query is actually trying to interpret is anything that's inside of the quotation and leaving out the word what. But somehow in D, it's just ridiculous. So hold on. Okay. Okay, there. More comfortable just adjusting distance between the laptop and myself. But it's a little crammed up here. Anyway, so let's look at D. What are we trying to do here in D? It's interesting. See, in D, oh, by the way, you know what this vertical bar means, eh? Vertical bar is actually the, let me just take it out of here and put it in fact, I have it here already. So I've used a vertical bar, but let me just put OR. This is a replacement or something that substitutes OR. So if we had this query, what are we trying to achieve? I want the search to actually entertain the word what, where, and how, or interpret it in spite of it being a stop word. I need this to be forced as a batch by putting individually each of these what, where, and how inside of the course. And assuming that there could be a possibility that any of the three words, what, where, and how, could make part of the question or somehow has a connection with internet research and a question mark ending. So this could be another way. I may want to search for something or something to do with internet research that poses a question. So there could be different ways in which you can use the quotation marks, and it may require for you to fine tune those placements of quotations by substituting it with the words and the phrases and whatever else, including symbols, notations. Anything placed inside of the quotes has to have an exact match, and it forces the search to even match things which otherwise outside of the quotation becomes irrelevant. So that was the last leg of what we were talking about, or what we discussed earlier. This part we have done already. So I'm going to start with a topic. It's called operational Boolean search queries, or basic Google search methods. That's the topic. Here comes another concept, something that you would be surprised that things in using the Boolean A and D. Now, first of all, you know that the search has, in fact, let me just move this down a little. Let's just start with what Boolean operators are. First of all, we know it already. But the logic, the Boolean logic that we will look at from the definition perspective, anything, see, Booleans are derived from algebra, or it is an algebraic expression, something that, does not necessarily have to deal with the numerals or numbers, but rather the numbers can be substituted by objects, and each object could be alphanumeric or it could be textual also, as long as the text is parsed or given um, uh, um, or are rather symbolized by any variables A, B, C, and D. So A, if I want to ask the, or to, if I have to make the algebraic expression out of a word, let's say content is the word that I want to be parsed or equated to or substituted by the alphabet A. What am I supposed to do? Easy, A is equal to content, right? And therefore, if A is symbolizing the word content, then A is the variable. And therefore, for the operators such as Booleans, which makes three operators like AND, A and D, that is in capital letters, and then OR in capital letters and NOT in capital. So these are three words. These are the words that actually are responsible for working with the text or the textual content of anything or any words or any phrases. They become objects, and OR and NOT starts to work with it by giving it a logic of sorts that can substitute, equate, take out, or add words together. That's the simplest way that I can explain how algebraically the and or not are involved or are responsible. So what are these A and Ds, ORs, and NOTs? All in large caps. If you use it in small caps, that's like ABC of using Booleans. If it's small cap, it will be treated as a word. So it has to be all in capitals. So assuming that A and D is one of the Booleans that are responsible for adding or connecting two words with each other by giving it a command to actually either add the two words together that fall on either side of it. That means on the left of it and the right of it. So the rule is that there has to be some object or some text on the left side of the end and the right side of end. Both operators A and D and OR require these variables. Variables, again, just talking about words, but sometimes I switch between the way, algebraically, I can make you understand few things easier. So I use these as substituted words off and on. So A and D, the two variables or the two textual contents of anything that falls on either side of A and D or OR are basically the ones that not only equate with each other, but are given a logic on account of what is held in between as a consideration of either adding the two words that makes it an A and D command, and then to request to find either or whatever is on the left or right of it by using OR command. So if you look at the first one, we've got a Venn diagram, that's just A plus B. So A plus B effectively or a plus sign is substituted by A and D. So A could be a word, B could be a word. If you want to ensure that both A and B stick together or somehow are available or are to be found as a mandatory return, you can force it by using A and D. So both can be found, not necessarily in the same sequence as A, B. It could be B, A also. But the only um, objective of A and D here, where two variables A and B are used, is just to ensure that A is mandatorily present and B is mandatorily present. It has no concepts of putting anything within quotation. So to maintain sequence of all these have to be placed as A first and B after. So that's what A and D will do. Ensure both are present, but not necessarily as A, B. It could be B, A, or it could be A separate and B separate on a content page. So that's the function of A and D. Then OR is very, sometimes it's misunderstood, or I could say that not really in the sense of how we'd like to interpret it algebraically, but rather in the sense of how it is applied by the search engine. That's what is slightly different from the original idea where OR is supposed to give an option of whatever is on the left of it and whatever is on the right of it to be found as a choice, as either can be a correct choice. So that's the concept. But you will see how the search engine interprets it slightly different. So anyway, from the basics of what we need to understand on this slide, it could be a choice A or could be a choice B. That means could both can be found, or at least one has to be found. In NOT, we learned that NOT as a textual word for Boolean is non-operational for using it in Google search. Instead, we use a minus sign. And we've dealt with the minus sign before, so you know how to use it, where it needs to actually be hugging the or attaching itself to whatever is to be taken out or to be filtered out. Um, did I explain the minus sign before on how the convention works for the minus sign when you use it as a notation versus the word NOT? Did we do that or not? Okay. Okay, so good. I'm sorry. Sometimes because I'm giving another class, I get disoriented or there's a bit of a confusion when I pick up with your class. I don't know if I discussed it with you or with, but at least my memory says that I did something with it. So my apologies. Just let me put this word here. Okay. So I'm going to now talk about NOT exclusively. NOT has got a structure because there is a difference in how you're going to pose a search query with this operator, which is not the same as using A and D and ORs. So and using it as a notation, it is a little bit of a trick to how you can put that in your search. So supposing again, I'm just going to beat up the same words again and again. Internet research, uh, I would say ideally it should be ideally. I mean, if the Boolean was supposed to work as a word, this is how the query should work. Whereas the not is one exception where whatever falls on the right hand side of it is supposed to be eliminated or supposed to be excluded from the results. And this is where you have to think of it as somewhat a query that responds to these two words and excludes the word specialist, which is on the right hand side of NOT. Okay. That means following the word NOT. That's how it's supposed to work generally. Everywhere else, it should have the same convention for using it in searches. But in Google and in Bing, we have a problem where NOT does not function how it's supposed to, and therefore we have to use it as such that first of all you need to get rid of NOT totally because it is non-functional. Okay. Second thing is that you have to put a minus sign. Okay, a minus sign, which is like a it's on your keyboard. It's not exactly a dash, but looks like a dash if you um, put it as a dash. This is the minus sign. And the minus sign is not like you are replacing it exactly under where not should be from the point of view of what is left as gap on either side of NOT for separating objects that needs to be excluded, like in the word specialist. See, the placement is right in the middle, a gap of a single character, another single character. Had this been OR or AND, it would be all good to go without any issues. But with the exception that we are dealing with here is the word NOT. And what usually students do is when they learn that NOT is not recognized, instead use a minus sign. They just simply replace it with this same location or place it in the same location as if they are replacing the word NOT, which is incorrect. So this is incorrect. The correct way to do it is to not leave a gap between the minus sign and whatever the term you want to exclude. So if minus sign has to work to exclude the word specialist, which is on the right of it, the minus sign has to be hugging, touching, and basically attached to the first alphabet of any of the words or search terms you're placing right after. So minus sign without any gaps and starting with the word specialist makes it mandatory for the search to return with the content pages that contain these two words but exclude the word specialist. So this is the correct way that you're going to use the minus sign. Okay. Another variation of how we can use the minus sign let's just take this example. And when I'm doing my search, I'd say that these three words I need for sure to be included. So let me just put these in quotation marks. And supposing I don't want the word training and certification courses to be included, or maybe I just want some information on something other than training and certification. And I have this entire, like, all these four words together that I don't want the search to bring back to me. I could either put it within the quotations, but to ensure that these are not to be included, I'm just going to put a minus sign and make sure that wherever the quotation mark starts and followed by whatever, you can see, as you can see that it's enclosing all four words as a search term. The entire term needs to be connected with, or need to be attached with, or to be followed by the minus sign without any gap between where the quotation mark starts and the minus sign itself. So this is where it's going to eliminate the entire search phrase. Let's do another instance, another variation. Let's suppose I want to just eliminate the word training. And of course, don't need to be there. I want in the search to include internet research specialist as a term. I want to exclude the word training from my search results. I also want to include the word certification and the word courses. First concept that needs to be understood is that whatever is followed after the minus sign is not to be considered as eliminating words, or the words that needs to be eliminated. So in this case, where I have minus sign hugging the word training, whatever is followed by the word training, like certification and courses, will not be excluded. Okay, so minus sign will not have an impact on certification and the word courses, even though everything that is followed after training is not it is from the convention, or from what you've learned, or for you what you may have misunderstood, is that anything that is on the right hand side are everything that needs to be excluded. So that is not the case. Whatever is touching the minus sign as the word training itself would be excluded, and not certification and courses. I'm just dealing with some common mistakes that people do, or misconception, and at times they or maybe there could be other questions that you can ask. With what we are learning, you could come up with something that, what if this or that happens. So whatever comes to your mind, we can share that as well. So the next thing that I would say is that we can do multiple eliminations. Okay. Now, in the word training, did I have to put it within the quotation marks, if I may ask the question? I know we did this in 1.3c, training and certification, for a reason. Of course, we wanted all of it as a phrase to be excluded. But for the word to be excluded, I don't think we need to put the word training within quotes. So I'm just going to make this correction. Yeah. All right. In the second instance, or where I have used 1.5 as an example, I can use the minus sign to work on different words to be excluded. Like I can write it the way I did with, multiple individual words to be excluded from search. So this is correct. All that we are writing is correct except for 1.1. Yeah, this was incorrect. Everything else that is following 1.2 up to 1.5 is correct. what could be other possibilities that could make a mistake that would be. So anyway, let's just stop at this. This is an interesting concept. We're going to start with A and D, and I'm going to explain why A and D can be replaced by quotation marks only, and therefore the A and D may not be required. So Anna is asking, should you enclose certification courses in quotes? So let's just look at it again and see which one she's talking about. So Anna, you mean in this one? 1.3, right? 1.4. So your question is, if we can put these two within quotations. Um, I'm assuming that these are taken for the sake of this example as individual words. So if you want, yes, certainly you can go like this. And if you want certification courses to be considered as single term for eliminating it, you can put it within quotation marks, and this would make it correct also. Now, let's come back and we'll talk about, we're just going to take a break now. I'm going to talk about A and D operator, and I'm going to talk about how A and D could be substituted by using quotation marks. Interestingly, and I don't know if you've noticed, if you go to where the Google search is giving you the guideline on which operators to use, like it has a listing which is coming from its original, its main website. Um, it is not showing you the NOT. It is giving you OR, and it is giving you, I'm sorry, yeah, it is not showing NOT, and it is also not showing A and D. The only Boolean that they expect for you to learn is the operation of OR. I don't know if you noticed it, but I'll show it to you also. And there is a reason, and we'll debate on that and we'll figure out what would work. At the same time, because it is going to take a bit of your attention to learn when we get to it after the break. So, have a strong cup of coffee and give yourself 10 minutes at least. But when I come back, hopefully, I'll be able to deliver what I expect for you to understand on the concept side. And let's take a break now. So it won't be too long. I'll see you in about 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not yet, Brooke. I
Oh,
hope it's Brooke.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Anna.
You're welcome. Oh my.
Okay, I think we're all back. We can continue. Uh, yeah, just a few slides that are probably going to be helpful. So I'm just collecting them. I'm pretty much all set. Okay. Okay. So A and D, what A and D is going to tell you, the story works like this. We have examples. We'll just go with the examples. Again, it's conceptual. You can test it out on your own if you'd like. When we get done, like back somewhere, if you have a bit of a window of time, you can try them. But we certainly will do hands-on when the time comes. Here, we want to ensure that concepts are cleared, rules are understood, and some of the conventions are followed. So that's where we are continuing with operator A and D for the Boolean. That is adding the two terms on either side of it. Taking an example one, just follow the arrow, please, here. You could see that I have textual semantics as two words together, and I have lexical semantics as another set of words. Both are falling on either side of A and D. Therefore, A and D is fully functional. But how is it going to act is what we'll discover. When you write something as I did, which is typically what everybody else is doing with their searches today, you would find that A and D is going to, first of all, is going to react to or consider anything for it to interpret, which is in its closest vicinity on the right and the left of it. So semantics being the closest and lexical being the closest, the first idea for the search engine is to ensure that the words semantics and lexical are found in the content pages, or if not, it is going to look for a combination of words to see if lexical semantics together are more popular, and therefore they form a search term which is frequently searched, and being a popular search, it would just attach lexical and semantics together and start to look for or look for both terms, semantics and lexical semantics. And if semantics alone is not as popular and together with the word textual, both are assumed to have the popularity as most search terms, then textual semantics and lexical semantics both will be part of your search results. Here, there is no choice on either side, whatever exists. Moreover, anything which is in the closest vicinity would have a precedence over what is on the extremities of what is, the closest one. So the vicinity or the extremities in the case of lexical semantics is the word semantics. And in the case of textual semantics, the word textual is on the extremities, and semantics is closest. So this is pretty much standard way of how search would work, or at least this is how it is programmed to work. Right. One of the things that happen when you put your terms the way we did, and this could be by design, so don't think that everything has to be within quotation marks. Okay. And for the way in which we are explaining it, you stick to the fact that, we are looking at concepts and what might happen if you don't put it within quotation marks. Next thing that could occur is that the search engine is not a perfect thing. It is flawed in so many different ways. At least it is trying to put a rope around words, which in itself is linguistics in itself is very complicated. So to deal with that, and with such a massive amount of words and data and everything that it's playing with, it has it has that it is not as perfect. Okay. So what it's doing with the word textual, you would see that it has attached or looked at partial word, or what makes the word contextual has been found by this search only because a part of it, which is TEXTUAL, is now being matched. So if there is a tightness or there is a little bit of see, search engine wants to satisfy the consumers by just throwing a lot of info. It has a way of suggesting that it is capable of delivering whatever it has, and if it doesn't have it, it is going to make something out of it. That's the strangest part. So what it did, even though textual was not the word, I'm sorry, contextual was not the word, but you would find that in the return results, in the snippets, when you look at it, the highlighted portion would just be making the word textual or partial word of contextual highlighted as if it has matched it, which is not true. So textual versus contextual would have two different meanings, yet because it was part of it, part of the word contextual, it just came about. And that's where you would have to have better control, understanding what might happen. Okay. So this is one occurrence. Let's see what else it's showing. Now, like I said, the first reaction would be to look for the term semantics and lexical. Then it's going to start to go haywire. That's when it's going to start to go into its own dance. Okay. Now, next thing that it'll do is going to start to look for lexical semantics, textual semantics, text semantics, textual, the word textual, the word lexical, the word semantics. Even though you have tried as much as you could to control it by using the operator A and D, but you could see how it has reacted. It has started to find the words that would be a combination of words or single words, but anything that makes it appear or makes it look like as if it has done it in a very non-sequential or a non-conventional way, but it is uh, definitely going to include the terms on the left and right of it. Not that it is just going to leave out any of these terms because of the way you have put the A and D, but it is going to find different variants of it. And it'll think that it has delivered something of use to the users when effectively it's not. So that is what you have to be concerned about. In the next example, we have put both these terms within the quotations within quotes. So what is this supposed to do? It is supposed to find the word textual semantics and lexical semantics in the same content pages it will be retrieving. Okay. So in other words, what might happen or what could be flawed in this way of writing is that when you've used A and D and you've forced these two to be available on content pages, make sure that you understand the fact from based on your logic and your experience that perhaps it is less likely that the word textual semantics or lexical semantics could be found together. Not that it is what is happening right now with these two words, but just to give you an idea that there could be an impediment to finding the correct results only because the two terms you have used would have less likelihood of being found together on same content page. For example, if the idea is the same for the words that you have used to describe your content pages that you need, and yet you have worded it in 2, 3 different ways and you have used the A and D, it means that perhaps it is less likely that the same idea would be presented in 3 different words or with 3 different ways, as if it is a forced return with the A and D applied, whereas all could not be found logically or considering the fact that the idea would have different wordings, yet both wordings could not be existing together. So that could be a possibility, all right? But you will, yeah, yeah. Sorry. Is this? I didn't hear you well. Was somebody saying something? Eh? Hello. What happened? Maybe I got distracted. Somebody was probably not asking a question. So anyway, so you get this sense with the explanation I just gave you, I guess, probably. All right. So now if I've used the A and D for finding these two terms together, assuming they exist, and it is the correct way of writing the query, nothing to worry about. It is discoverable, and it happens that textual semantics and lexical semantics can be found together on the same page. Now, if I had to remove or take away the A and D from here, would I still be getting somewhat similar, or at least, if not the same, but similar results? You could say yes or no between 2 and 3. Now that you know what quotations does. So what will happen is that between 2 and 3, you can assume that it is more or less the same results. Thank you, Anna. The removal of A and D has not impacted the search results. With what you get to see as numbers is perhaps an indicator that, with the, if there was a huge variation in the number of results, one can say that two queries are effectively different. But with 560 versus 548, it is considered to be similar or same results. Okay, just know that, so that you don't get distracted with the a few hundreds or few thousands that get returned. It's a difference or differential between two ways of writing the same query. So I would think that it hasn't done any damage if we had just taken away A and D. And why is that? You remember from using the quotes, it had two functions. One was to make the term appear as if it is a one single search phrase with numerous words in between, or whatever else you put in. So that was the first thing. Second was that it enforces or makes sure that anything within quotes are returned as exact match, or mandatory return is what we expect if anything is inside of the quote. So two functions of putting it within quotes. Compare that with 2. Isn't it doing the same thing, where textual semantics and lexical semantics are the two terms, and we want both of these to be returned and mandatorily appear in our search results intact as the way they are written inside of the quotes? So what we are saying here, between 2 and 3, you don't necessarily need to put A and D. And the way we teach here and how we have learned from our experience is that the best way of writing search query is to make it short, make it effective, and follow the rules so that you don't have to add anything unnecessary, which or add any operator that is not necessarily required. That is how we say that one can be more proficient in doing or building search queries, by making it simple, effective, and eliminating anything unnecessary. So here, number 3 is preferable because it's not going to use A and D, and it is effectively something that the Google search is proposing that we should be doing, and not using A and D as much as we'd like to. Let me just break out of this for a moment. I want to show you, if you ever went to Google search help, and many of you must have. I mean, I'm sure since you took the course, the first point of contact for anyone to find out what is prescribed by Google, that's where you would go. So this is where I went to see what are the common, it is, I think it's called Google search help. When you go there, this is where you find all the operators, or at least basic operators. Then there is advanced operators that Google is identified as well. So this is our area. This is what we are discussing. So if you look at the list, they are prescribing @ $, hashtag, and it is saying put minus in front of the word. It is not telling you to use NOT. Then it is saying put phrase or build a phrase by putting it within the quotations. It is not telling you that quotation marks is enforcing or enforceable on individual or single keywords as well. Okay, then there's two dots, not to worry about, but look at what it has discussed as far as booleans. It is only talking about an OR operator, and even OR operator example is very simple, and it can get extremely complicated, and it has other sort of attributes which makes it workable outside of what is simply stated by Google. Yeah. And anywhere here, I don't know if you find the A and D. Can you see any A and D in here? There's no A and D. Yeah. So Google is not very keen for you to use A and D right now, but let's see what the logic is. However, A and D is workable, and we use it under certain situations where we need to separate the two functions, which we will discover later on, that makes one long search queries, and each and the length of that query may be broken down into different segments or different operations to be to be um, to be executed at the same time, and that's when we use A and D to separate those segments. All right, we are not going to that yet, so we will be focused on substituting A and D with quotation marks as if it is a best prescription in situations where you don't really need the A and D. Okay. So going back to the slide again, here the outcome by using quotation marks is that you'll get textual semantics and lexical semantics. All right. I haven't tested it yet, but I don't mind running it in a browser. Let's see what's going to happen. So we'll run two instances, one with A and D, and then let's just pull this out. Make this so two. Okay. So you see that this one is inside of the quotations and this one is using A and D command. So let's run the first one and see what's going to happen. And by the way, you know, but perhaps from your own experience that if some of the terms are not highlighted in your description or title, or if it is not showing in any of these three segments or the three elements, it will surely be present when you click on the navigation and go to the page itself. They will be surely be there. Otherwise, they won't even come up in the in this part in the search pages. I'm going to run the other one. So I see that more or less I will get the same results by using both. The best way is to just look at the number of results. 516 versus 525, not much of a difference. We don't even get to 500 results. That's how Google runs. It's just giving you limited number of pages to look at, which don't actually complete the numbers that are shown on top. So 516 and 525 is more or less the same. Now we'll start getting introduced to A&D in a more formal way. This is where it's going to give you a logic of how the algebraic or from the algebra perspective or from the relationship perspective, how each of those wordings that are on either side of A and D are treated or are considered or given a logic. The assumption is that X is, let's say, one set of words, or it could be just a single keyword. Y could be another. So X and Y are the two variables in this case. So when we do A and D, what it's saying, for a better understanding of what it means for the search engine to interpret it as. And at all times, remember that whenever you use A and D, OR, or any operation that requires for the variables or the wordings on both sides to exist for it to work, it is also making sure that, or rather checking that there is a relationship between the two, or they would not be on either side. Means that there is an understanding that anything that is to be compared or added has some contextual relationship. Therefore, what it is saying, and this is FYI only, it's not part of the exam. So think of it as just a logic that could be working in your mind. One is that the X of Y, it is a relationship, means that X of Y means a body of what exists inside of Y or anything that is part of Y. As an example, the impact of X on Y, the similarity of X with Y, or X inside of Y, which is the opposite of which is saying that X could be part of Y, similar to Y, impact or a relationship of X on Y, and so on. So if it makes sense to you, you can just think or assume that this is a logic that is applied, but not as important for what we are about to do, but for your information only. Let's look at how A and D is replaced by quotation marks. So if I can get your attention on number of these queries that we are running, and they would be running consecutively like A, B, C, D, A, B, C, and D. And each of these are different ways of explaining the same concept, but it is arranged hierarchically, or it is arranged to give you an idea of how these queries can transform and replace the word or the operator A and D. In the first instance, 3 words, again, same words. Now, what happens when you leave a gap of a single character? It acts in 2 ways. One, it separates the terms. Second thing it does is that it assumes, it is assumption again. It is not a convention, or it is not a compulsory enforcement, but assumption that the gap is replaced by a plus sign. Or the first instance, as I mentioned to you, when it is doing search for multiple number of words in a search phrase outside of the search, outside of the quotes, it is going to, first of all, look for all of the words first, and then start to make a choice of which ones to connect and which ones to drop. We did that earlier. So the first assumption is for the search engine to think that there is an assumed plus sign on account of it being separated individually with the gap of a single character. So this is one assumption. If you go further with what I've explained here, now you don't have to put a plus sign. I'm not putting a plus sign in the search query because it's worthless. It won't have any impact. This is just to give you and just to explain the concept only. Therefore, the plus sign is continued further as assumed to be existing without you noticing it as a user. It is the same as, or this assumption is the same as internet A&D research, A&D specialist, meaning that it would enforce these terms, all three of them, or individually each word would be returned by the search, but not in the same sequence. So internet can be in para 1 of a content page, research specialist together could be in para 3, or research could be another para and specialist could be another para. So they are not connected as if they're sequentially arranged. So that is how it is going to look like for the search. In C, A and D is replaced by, well, not replaced, but rather eliminated totally. And individually, the three words are enclosed as if they are to be specifically present in the same way as we looked at when we did internet A&D research, A&D specialist. So this one and this one is the same thing. Okay. So as I explained, internet research specialist, they should be there, but not in the same sequence. Here, all three words have to be there, but not necessarily in the same sequence. So therefore, where C is showing this part with A and D is the same as this one. In other words, it's saying that the internet research and specialists, when placed in quotes as individual words, is not the same as when you put these three within the quotations. I think we've learned this part also. So it is kind of a revision. Don't think I'm teaching something new here with what we have in D. So internet research specialist 3 is not the same as. Why it is so? Any confusion here in D? First of all, if I may ask anyone, do you know why D is not the same in D? The first expression is not equal to or not the same as this one.
The first with the three separate words in quotes are three separate words, whereas the second one is
Right.
an entire phrase.
Correct. And therefore, what is the likelihood of getting more results out of between the two ways of writing the query? You think you'll get a lot more return results in this one where each of these are in quotes versus internet research specialist in quotes?
Yes, I think the first one would turn up, every instance of
Yes,
those words appearing, so that would give you many more results.
exactly. And this is a classic question you'll get in CIRS exam. It's logical, but it has a way of finding out if you've got the concept cleared up. So definitely this will be a question and you will get full marks for it. Okay, so internet research specialist is not equal to internet A and D. So it's the same, just the reverse, just using A and D. So logic is D and E is understood well and don't need to worry about it anymore. That's not important. Second part of Boolean is OR operator. This is a concept which is misunderstood in so many different ways with how, first of all, how it is actually expressed or how it is presented with what you get to learn online from, different articles, blogs, even with Google, it's even more simplified. So people don't understand the how OR exactly works. And I'll explain it to you in great detail with this slide. And thankfully, this is a very effective slide. What OR does is, and you can read this carefully and try to interpret it in your own mind to see if you still don't understand. At least one search term is required between whatever is on the left and right of it, obviously. So as a choice, at least one is required. And this is conventionally accurate for anyone to think of OR as a choice, specifically as a choice. But then it goes forward and it says more than one. That means more than one can be found or all can be returned. Okay. So what it's saying is that it works both as if it is given a choice to find at least one out of whatever is on either side, or find all that exist on either side of it. Meaning that even though it is a choice, but it thinks of it as a first instance or default action to return both that are on either side of it. That's the first response. It is not exactly core OR operation, but rather a combination of A and D and OR together. Now, let's see if we have two words, pie or pudding. In the first instance, it is going to find both pie and pudding. So your OR operation is not actually kicking in. And there could be reason for it too, if it finds that there is more occurrences of pie and pudding somewhere as if it is more searched together words, you would find that pie and pudding results are showing up as if both are important for the search to return for you when you wanted it as an option. So if it found both, it's going to return both first. Then in the second instance, it is going to show its actual feature of finding either pie or pudding. So when you write pie or pudding, it is effectively A and D first, or the first action or a preferred action, and then the OR action kicks in. So that's what OR is going to do, right? And you can always substitute it with the vertical bar. I usually prefer notations or symbols versus, if I have to write it in words, especially for Boolean operators. So I use symbols like a vertical bar for OR. It is probably, there is no, I can't say that there is a rule. It could be a personal choice, but this is my personal preference and I find it effective and error-free. Sometimes the words themselves are not, giving us, or it is not acting as they should for some unknown reasons. So I've found that using a symbol like vertical bar usually is doing a better job and it is more reliable. Again, I don't really, well, this is again a logic, something similar to what we did with A and D, X and or Y, the impact of X with Y, X similar to Y. Yeah, this is like poetry, literally. So, it's not much for me to talk about. It's just a relationship. Remember, it always has to be a relationship or some logic or preferential treatment of either or between two choices or choices that exist on either side of these OR and A and Ds. So that is what is important, a concept we'll carry forward with this and you'll soon realize how important that relationship is. Irrespective, let's look at quick illustrations of how A and D can be used and how OR can work with A and D. Okay. So what is this quick illustration? How to, okay. D-R-A-W-A-N-D, draw or paint. Now, we don't use parentheses in Google search. So you know that in Bing, parentheses are useful, or you could say that they are effective and workable. Whereas in Google search, for some reason, they don't consider the parentheses as being, you know, for consideration as part of your query search. So parentheses should not be used, even though all over the web where they are giving you some illustration, they're using these parentheses as if they are effectively or operationally working in Google when they're not. And Google is very clear about it. They have, there is numerous places you can go to check, even in their, forums. They are very clear that the parentheses are not usable. Just to give it a better sense of learning where parentheses fail. And this is one of the drawbacks of Google, where parentheses, in my opinion, are very important in few ways. And I want to show you those examples or show you where they can be important. So let's suppose I want to look for a vacation package. Okay, so this is my search term, vacation package. And I'd say that I need a choice between two groups or two different options which require grouping of variables or search terms. So if I wanted a trip that involves Paris, this is a European trip, for example, Paris, and say Paris and Rome. And then I need something that says Istanbul and Sofia, Bulgaria. So I have these two groups, literally two groups. And for me to make a choice between the two, or for the search to find any of these combinations, I would probably have to put the parentheses as if I'm grouping the two options, okay? Where I want something that is Istanbul and Sofia, or Paris and Rome. So two of these could be a choice, and I want the search to find these as if these are two different groups. So effectively, let's say this is the search term X, and this is group A, and this is group B. Wouldn't you think that this is what the search should be executing on account of how we are able to group them? I think so. And the only way we can group it, and in the sense of how we can use the parentheses to separate it or make it into a group, we have to put parentheses, don't we? Right? But this is not possible, because you cannot group them. You cannot put the parentheses. Parentheses won't work. So there is an example on how the OR is applied, or what is the effective way of using OR. And I want you to discover this in examples we have in the book, which are shown here. This we will do in the next class. This is a very good example, and you have this in the book as well. So if you want to find something that we do in the class or we've learned in the class, I can always open up the book and give you the reference to the chapter you may want to look up. And anytime we have a gap of a day between the next class, perhaps some of you would find time to look it up. So I'm just going to open up the book as well, just to show you where it's at and for you to at least get a sense of what's going to be discussed later. I started with parent. I just wanted to give you the just an idea of the parentheses right now, but we will deal with it later when we we get to it. Where is the book? It's not difficult to find. If you go to the book, all you have to do is go to the chapter which talks about basic search operators. And then, I'm sorry, I didn't open the book earlier. So I have to use it. Booleans, 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 Booleans. Basic search operators. Okay. Now in the book, if you go to page here it is. Here, page 97 onwards, eh? So on page 97, you would see this example and it is explained in great detail, so that when you come back, you will know why parentheses are not applicable and how to work around it and what is the best way to approach the query in situations which I just showed you in this notepad. How to work out a situation like this. Okay. You marked it, you know what page I'm talking about, so you can look it up later. Let's get this animation finished. I don't want any surprises. There is one more surprise. Okay. So let's look at how we have used the OR operator, and we have used it along with A and D. So if we had a stop word, how to, and put it within quotes, and then we have a choice between draw or paint. And as you could see that there is a parenthesis right here. This is more of a expression in an algebraic sense. So it's not what you're going to put in the query. In how you're going to present it as a search query is shown in the next one, which is without using the parenthesis and without using the A and D. Okay. You don't need an A and D anymore here. That's what I'm trying to say. If it was an algebraic expression, this was the logic. And when you're doing algebra and anything in parentheses needs to get resolved first. And if the option is to select between draw and paint, the convention says that anything that gets resolved inside of the parentheses eventually gets added to or connects with what's outside of the parentheses. So in the sense of how and why we have used it and expressed it in an algebra in an algebraic equation is just to show you in the way the A and D or OR are supposed to work. Okay. So the OR needs to get resolved first, then it will be added to the word how to. And if we want to run it as a query, we are not going to use A and D. We can use how to as a mandatory or a factor that needs to be returned as part of the content page. However, the word draw or the word paint is a choice where either of these can be attached to how to, or both can work where how to draw or how to paint would show up in the same content pages. So that's the logic or the difference in how algebraically it is explained and how it is run inside of the search box. In the third and the fourth, it is just showing you different combinations. So what is evolving or what is following each of these search queries. Why not how to draw or how to paint? Yes, it is how to draw and how to paint. That's what's going to come. So when you have how to draw or paint, it would show how to draw and how to paint, or it would show either how to paint or how to draw. Sorry, there is a typo here. Let me fix that. What this slide is showing is that either it can find how to draw or how to paint, or it could find both, which means how to draw and how to paint. So A and D over here is not something that should be considered as an operator. Let's just put it this way, okay? Or let's put it this way, as if it is not an operator. It is just a part of uh, language part. So it can produce how to draw and how to paint, or either of these two choices. So how to would either connect with draw or paint. Okay, this is another. So far, we are just learning rules and conventions of where the OR or how the OR is connecting, or how it is combining with the search terms. Here is another show of what the OR considered um, as to be looked up first, or if there is a priority or a precedence over what function is more important or takes precedence over the other one. So if we have a query such as vacation and London or Sofia, we can make this combination too, where London or Sofia can be a choice, whereas vacation and London is not a choice. So it is kind of conflicting, but at the same time, it has a convention which would resolve this query, where OR takes precedence over A and D, which means that OR is a choice that needs to be resolved first, and A and D is the second choice, which attaches the term to whatever is the outcome of a choice between these two. So that logic you have to clear in your head. But you never know. With OR, there are so many combinations, and usually the search terms are not very simple. They're a combination of words. So it can play in all different ways. But ideally, this is the simplest way of explaining of how the search would resolve it. So London or Sofia will be resolved first before it gets connected to the word vacation. Then there is a question of the vicinity or the closest. By the way, just so that I'm clear myself, there is another convention which it's probably going to follow after. Yeah, I think it's there, so not to worry about. Yeah, it's here. So we'll deal with that later. So for now, we have these examples shown as 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 7. And this is just giving you an idea of how the different ways in which the results would turn up when you are using these combinations or these variations of applying the OR operation. Yeah. So I'm just going to take 2 minutes right now. I'm just going to fix up the heating. So I'll see you in a little bit. Just have a quick look at. Sorry about that. It took me, I think I messed up my thermostat more than, in fact, I made it worse. So sorry for the time I took. I'm going to continue with this slide, and let's look at how the examples are going to work out. So the first one, how to draw or paint. What it would do is, first it's going to see if it can find both, like how to draw and how to paint, or it would find either one of them. So this is the easiest one. What is the next one? In the case of an example here, there is a recipe. It's an ancient recipe. We call it primal recipes or primal paleo recipes, paleo. I guess that's the word. So anyway, what this OR is doing, it's just shifted its position. And here it is going to make a choice between paleo recipes as 2 words versus just 1 word, primal, on the left hand of it. So what could be the outcome of this? It could be different combinations. One is, and always remember that the first instance for the search in OR or even AND is to find the closest that could be a variable or a word that needs to be resolved as a priority. And if it couldn't be resolved, then it will default to the word recipes. So between primal and paleo, and these are assumed outcomes. This is for explanation only. So in the first instance, it's going to try to find all of these, which means it's going to look for primal plus paleo plus recipes. And then, of course, is going to start to make combinations and see whichever it can attach to. Because now OR is given a choice between what is left and on the left of it, and then its combination with or connecting with anything as a choice on the right of it. So the idea is presented with different combinations of how eventually it might just show up. So first, this part, the one with the plus sign, plus is not exactly the plus as you would think in the search query, but assuming all of these are to be found, then it's going to look for paleo and recipes as a combination of primal paleo recipes or primal alone or paleo recipes. So effectively, when you don't put terms within quotation marks, it can actually broaden the search. At the same time, it can have a very erratic behavior. I would rather have put paleo recipes within quotations and left primal outside of the quotes. One thing that perhaps I forgot to mention is that anything that is to be compared on either side of the operation of OR, it is a mandatory command for the search to find the outcome of it, as in this case, if this is the OR, then whatever is on the left, which is, we're just assuming the first word paleo here, and on the left hand side, there is primal, on the right hand, it's paleo. So whenever the terms are, or whichever terms are closest to it, are considered as a mandatory or inclusive of what needs to be returned, either as a choice with OR, or if it was an A and D, then as 2 terms to be present, which could be the ones that are closest to each other. So you don't need to put them within the quotation. So let me redo this in another way as well. If I have something here that says A and D, or even something here that says Okay, so between 2, 3, and 4, this one is a choice. Okay, therefore, either paleo or primal has to be returned, which means the word recipes can be dropped. Okay, what is enforced is the term that is closest or is on either side as one word, or it could be the search term within quotations. Whatever is on either side of it or closest to it is a mandatory choice or an inclusion as in A and D. And you could see that if you put A and D, both paleo and primal are compulsory or not necessary for you to put paleo within quotes, or not necessary for you to put primal within quotes. Okay, because they are assumed to have an impact on account of it being closest to the operation, which is A and D. Same thing with OR, primal and paleo are both to be considered a choice, and none of these, or you don't have to put primal or paleo within quotations. Okay. Whereas in the fourth one, you could see if I put paleo recipes within quotes, then this is the only reason I would do it is for it to become a phrase to connect these two words together. And here these two together are a choice between paleo recipes and the primal word primal. So both are to be operated upon or to be resolved on account of OR. Okay. Whereas if there was an extension to paleo recipes with added wordings that you want anywhere on the content page, which would, let's say, sausage as another word. If I add another word to it, then what is to be resolved or to be considered for getting for given a choice is the word paleo and primal, and sausage may be ignored or may not be ignored, but it is not really a choice which is directly impacted by OR. Okay. Same way if it was in 5, and instead of OR we had A and D, then paleo recipes within quotation marks is mandatory for the search to find, and so is primal. If there was another word before primal, say there was a word bread, okay, then A and D would make sure that these two are present, but may drop the word bread, and at the same time may also drop word sausage or find sausage instead of bread, but this would be a choice. Whereas these two, I'm just temporarily putting these within the brackets or parentheses, so for you to know that this is how it is going to operate. Same way, this is how it's going to operate. Now this is assumed parenthesis. Okay. And I know it's a lot of information and a lot of conventions and rules and so much to absorb. I would say that go through the recordings, make your notes, and sort of keep it as easy for you to understand by grabbing the idea first and then applying it for your own practice. Do some examples of your own just to test them out. That way you will solidify these concepts and be easier for you to remember. But that's why I used to say, and even in my last recording I mentioned that I would encourage for students to join in as many of you as you can to attend the few lectures that are to follow still. I mean, there are about 3 to 4 lectures together, which in my opinion are most important. First of all, it would allow you to ask questions and there could be questions that you may want to ask me later on as well. So it would have, so I guess you get the drift. You know what I'm talking about. So it's a lot of info, and I'm not just going to stuff you with so much of it that it would become counterproductive. Okay, so let's just say that anything that I mention as a reference to the book, you perhaps may want to look it up. So basic, or I think it's called, what is it called? Basic search operators. If you type it in the book, with the control F thing and just put the title, it'll take you to the exact page. And from there you can continue, right? Okay. So we're just doing some examples, just playing with different variants of how OR works. Third example, sausage, biscuits, cheese sauce. First, find both. If not both, find at least one. Okay. Example 4, recipes, gravy, sausage, and biscuits. Now we've got 3 words on one side and 1 word on the right-hand side. So how is the combination going to work? First, it's going to resolve sausage and biscuit because they're the closest one, and it would think of either of these two to be the first choice, or at least consider both as if they are necessarily required or mandatorily required with the A and D operation. And you can connect that with how OR is defined. It works with A and D and OR as if both are combination where A and D is the priority or is taken precedence over OR. So remember this. So when we are doing these 3 words on the left, 1 on the right, it's going to group it. It can group it in few ways. So this is what we have. We'll make variants of 6. Think of it A as one variant. I would say we could start with understanding that it would first try to resolve this. Okay. Then whatever is the outcome or whatever is more popular in relationship to or in association with the word gravy or recipe, that would prevail, or that would be the first option taken by the search when it has to come up with the choice of either one. If not, then both of these would have to join in, like recipes with sausage, recipes with biscuit, gravy with sausage, gravy with biscuit, and so it continues. And I could come up with so many different ways in which it would apply. So, assuming again parenthesis as just just for explaining it, not actually putting it in your search. So these two would have, I can just put some of the outcomes. So it could be sausage recipe, which means that the words does not have to be in the same sequence in how it is placed with what comes first and what comes next. There's no quotation marks to group them. And second thing is that because recipes, let's say, or a sausage recipe is the right term, but both of these words are more popular together. And somehow, even what got resolved with OR shows that the sausage itself is more prevalent with the searches. As long as it is written as sausage recipe, this is what's going to show up. So it's going to fulfill its obligations by doing connection or adding to, but at the same time, no sequence is guaranteed. So sausage recipe could be the outcome. And and the uh, gravy biscuit can be the outcome also. Just few that I will do. I mean, there could be so many more combinations, but just giving you an idea. And sausage, biscuit. So it can found result that has sausage biscuit and gravy. Okay, whereas and is not to be treated as if it is part of a choice in given words, but it could be part of what got written. In your description area of snippets, you would see that these words are highlighted. Okay, and this is not. So when you're using or, it is not as controlled operation as A and D is, or as the quotation marks are, which are more of enhanced binders versus OR that can result in some erratic behavior. This is just to give you an idea of what might turn up as a mix of things. And the important part is, how do we use or to control this behavior so that it becomes very specific. And as I mentioned to you, um, with the examples that shows parenthesis, that same example also shows how to control the OR in a better way. And we will learn that as we go along with doing some searches using it in the search boxes. When we meet next, I'm going to have a list of search queries. By the way, I have it here if you'd like. I mean, why not? I just put it for you to work on. These are different variations of how you can apply it. You can play with these combinations. Pretty much, these are, what we feel, or at least from the different variations that we thought could be possible with OR and A and D. We have put them together as examples 1 through 14 for student to practice. If you want, I could just put it in the chat box for you to copy and paste. It's not an assignment. Really, I don't believe in assignments, and I don't actually ask questions about assignments. I feel that we're all adults here with other priorities in our lives as well. So why put you on the spot? In fact, this is for assisting you in doing things that you can pretty much practice on your own. So I'm just going to put it in the chat box, and if you can just kindly copy and paste it somewhere, that will be nice. Why not? It's not allowing me to copy and paste things here. Okay, so I'll just copy this and paste it. New window. Here you can practice your OR and A and D. And let's just see if we can, let me put it in your Dropbox, okay? I'll do it right now, and it won't take long. This is the new folder I created. It's called class notes. So I'll just name it as practice. Call it 1. I'm just going to save it there. It should show up. Should show up in your search box. I'll just take 5 to 7 more minutes of your time, if you don't mind, because I think I I'm entirely responsible for losing out on, you know, the time for me to finish up these slides which were scheduled today. So if you can allow me few more minutes. Let's run one more slide, or maybe let's look at this moving on both items. Okay. No, I think this is going to take long. This is going to take long. And this is also a very good concept. And I'm so glad we have these slides to share with you. These are very explicit and obviously very complex at the same time to convey the rules of how multiple search terms can work together using OR, and what could be the priorities of using OR versus, and there, remember I told you there are times when you have to use AND to separate some of the functions or some of the segments of searches within the same query string. This is shown in example 2. That's what I'm going to talk about also. So it would take a little bit of time. It would take me about 15-20 minutes at the least. So we're not done yet with OR. Incidentally, we want to have to do this part before we can hop on to what is to follow next. So with the 15-20 minutes, 20 minutes of our time in our next lessons, we should get done with OR, and we would have completed A and D. Perhaps we can run some examples with a minus sign just to see how the negative words or excluded words can work in different ways with the Boolean. And then do hands-on examples. So in the next class, we'll be doing hands-on. And I would think that it would be nice if you can, the ones that I gave you, the ones that I put in your Dropbox, if you practice it a little bit with those, it will really be helpful for the next class. So I'm sorry I lost some of your time today. I couldn't finish up a few things. Could have done a slide or two, but I'll catch up. We'll catch up in our next lessons. So as far as Booleans is concerned, we have one more class to go. And after that, we'll do advanced search operators. So let's just call it an evening and see you guys all day after it. So we have a next class on Wednesday, same time.
Thank you very much. We'll see you then.
See you, Brooks.
Thanks.
See you, everyone. Thanks again.
Bye.
Thanks for coming. Was it all clear for all of you? Would you say that was at least something that you partially understood or understood altogether, or there was any confusion? Just a quick polls here, if you don't mind.
We need to practice, but it was clear.
It was
I
clear.
agree.
Right? All right.
Yes,
Thank you so
I
much.
understood. A lot of it is review for me, but I'd kind of forgotten about the OR, and a lot has changed since I was working on search engine optimization for Google many years ago.
Right, right. Oh, you worked with Google. Is this Admira or was it, is it?
Michelle.
Oh, Michelle, I'm sorry. I'm getting confused. See, that's what happens when we don't talk often. I sort of lose track of who I spoke with and who. Remember the introduction we had?
Yep.
Still a bit confusing for me because, like you said, you have to practice. I didn't practice communicating with you guys much. So that's what happened.
It's all good.
All right. Well, thanks again for participating. Look forward to meeting you the next class.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye-bye. Thank you.